people do generally make the more sustainable choices when they kind of think more deeply about it. So I think half of the problem is just that we spend so much of our day distracted and really just not present, that that we kind of live a kind of excessive lifestyle. So I think if you really put someone in a room and get them kind of thinking deeply about it, then thinking about where the kind of food that they're eating has come from, what's the kind of impact of driving everywhere, all these things, then that's really the goal. It's really about changing people's perspective.
Hi, and welcome to the Kind Community Sustainability Podcast. I'm your host, Giannavelli, and on the show, we uncover the stories, tactics, and skills of people doing great things for the planet and turn their experiences into practical advice that you can use to impact your own life and those around you. Today, I'm joined by Hector Hughes, co-founder of Unplugged. After years of working in a tech startup and becoming burnt out, Hector and a colleague decided to create the Digital Detox Retreat, which allow people to reconnect with nature while being off-grid without digital distractions. This episode was recorded in two parts, one early on in 2020 before their first ever customer, and the other recorded later on in the year. Although not marketed as a sustainable retreat, we discussed how they have built the business with sustainability in mind. Done so much in such a short amount of time. I really wanted to get you on and actually cram both episodes together. So there's going to be a piece here that will be edited in that will be your old you. And then we're going to jump forward and cut into this part where we really get the kind of juicy story of what's happened and your kind of like your journey from then, which is going to be great. So, but really quickly, Hector, kind of tell us a bit about the business. What's it all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the goal with Unplugged is basically we are putting cabins in the countryside around London, and we want to get people off their devices and give them a break from their always on life, and give them a space to recharge in nature. So we're running it's a 3-night digital detox in beautiful cabins just an hour from city life.
You were burnt out yourself, and now you're trying to allow other Londoners to avoid being in that stressful burnout state by giving them a space to go and become unplugged.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Because I think, we all know that we should spend less time on our phones. We all know that how kind of relaxing it is to go for a walk in a park or something like that, but we just don't take the time to do it, or most of us. So, I mean, anyone can go today and get a 5-hour train up to the Lake District, stay in a beautiful cabin for 2 weeks in complete isolation and recharge. But it's, there's a lot of friction to that. And if you're not kind of used to that kind of thing, then you're probably not going to do it. So it's how can we make this easily accessible to people? Hop on a train at King's Cross, half an hour, you're at the cabin, literally locking away your phone. Because I think as well, we were thinking about, we could just provide a lockbox and people turn up and they can use it if they want. But, we're our own worst enemy when it comes to that. I think we're so good at telling ourselves stories for why we should check our phone. It's like, but I've just got to send that one last message, or maybe I should check what the weather is, or whatever it is. So I think the only way around that, or for this launch and for this first cabin, is to literally lock people's phones away so that they have that space then to kind of wean them off it and recharge in nature.
Forward to it. So can you tell me a bit more about how you're building in a sustainable business model into this and your environmental impact?
Yeah, for sure. So I think a lot of this, because I think anyone building a business today, one of the big questions is kind of how does this fit into the future? So we're going completely off grid with the cabin. So it's going to be solar powered, water, off grid water as well. So it's it should be completely neutral footprint. And I think as well, you've got people's attention because they're there they don't have their phones, which is usually where the attention is. So it's a real chance to kind of, I think, introduce people to that kind of mindful living, I'd say, so maybe you can show them how much electricity they're using in the future or how much water, and they just start to get an idea of this. And as you say, if they're kind of doing the things themselves, like it's a lot more hands-on, and they've got to really think about, I think we kind of everything in our life now is just so easy and convenient that you don't really have to, you can just go through life on autopilot and you're just not present with anything you're doing. And then talking about sustainability, if you think about stuff like, how much plastic we're using and all these things, and I almost don't blame people for not realizing, because no one's really present with what they're doing. It's just going through life on that crazy kind of head down autopilot. So it's really about giving people that place to really be present with what they're doing, and just really understand the basics. So cooking without checking your phone every 5 minutes, using watching your energy usage because the solar panels haven't been on that day, or all this kind of thing. So I think it's really about, and it's also about introducing them to the environment as well. So I think one of the other big elements we want to leverage here is nature, and kind of introducing people to that, because I think especially living in London, you can just be completely oblivious to what most of the country looks like and what's going on out of the city centre. So I think we're working with farmers around London and the States. It's really about kind of educating people about the land around them and the countryside, because I think in the future, if we want there to be a countryside, then people really have to understand that, and we need to start to move back towards cultivating or letting the countryside regrow and repair. So there's actually a fantastic book which I've actually got here called Wilding. I'm not sure if you've come across that, but it's about a nature reserve in Kent. And so it was a farm. All the money was, they were losing money from farming, and they took the decision to completely stop farming and go back, just give the farm back to nature. So they just let everything kind of grow, and they introduced some species that had been obviously no longer on the land, and just kind of let the land go wild again. They've had just the most amazing success at reintroducing all these species, and I believe they now have a charity called the Rewilding Charity, which is looking at, because obviously there's a lot of pressure on farmers. The margins are going much lower next year with Brexit. They'll lose EU subsidies as well. So there's a big question over the future of farming. So what they're trying to do is convert farmland that's kind of losing money or not sustainable, and kind of give it back to nature, so that we can start to have the return of the English countryside. Because there was a huge push during the Second World War to grow food. So we leveled a whole load of the countryside to put in fields so that we could fund the war efforts and all that kind of thing. And now, as we're getting more efficient, and as we're finding new ways to create food and do all these things, the future is not going to be using 90% of the land to farm. It's going to be, I'm sure, to really have a sustainable future, I'm sure we've got to find smarter ways to do that. You look at the whole kind of food system at the moment in supermarkets, and food going through factories and getting plastic packaging and all that kind of thing getting brought to the consumer. It really just doesn't seem like a sustainable future to me. So I'm not sure what the answer is. Maybe it's growing food at home. Maybe that's the future. Maybe in the future we'll have something in our houses that can grow all the food we need, and we don't need to, and it cuts out that whole kind of supply chain, all the packaging and everything that goes in it.
But I think with Unplugged, it's perfect chance for someone to really experience that and say, yeah, I could do this. Or even you fill a gap where, similar to how you go meatless Mondays, let's have a, detox weekend.
Yeah.
Once a month, let's take the family and completely detox. Let's live life on our own terms. Let's take control of our own lives. Let's see if we can live off the earth for a weekend or so, and then go back to our crazy lives. We kind of get a bit of balance, because right now we're just take. Let's try and add a little detox in that, both digital detox, but more of a sustainable detox by connecting back to nature. So Hector, tell me a bit more about how Unplugged has implemented a number of sustainable tactics. You mentioned off-grid water, solar panels for energy. Is there any other cool things that you've discovered along the way, or even the cabin? You said is it made of wood, or tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the cabin is wooden cabin made in Sweden. So that's all sustainable materials as well. I think it's it's a business that has a kind of they've got a long history in the sustainable manufacturing market. So I think really aligned values with them on that. And I think one of the big other things is kind of really working with the specific site that you're in. So each cabin will be at a specific site, working with a specific landowner, and it's really about kind of maybe it's having some local produce from that land available in the cabin when people stay. So I mean, as you were saying earlier, it's really about getting people thinking, where does their food come from? And it's so kind of natural and easy if it's literally come out of the ground from 200 meters away. That's a really I think it's a really powerful message to people about how simple life can be, because life's got so complicated now. But as you say, it really comes back to the basics. And if we can get people, I think meals are a huge thing, but cooking with their families, and really kind of back to the basics and just doing these things right, then it will really, I think, empower people to live a more mindful and sustainable life.
This part of the show will be about our original conversation. It was pre-launch. You and your co-founder were getting ready to grab the first cabin and launch it. But tell us a story. Like, come on, when you got that first cabin in, tell us a journey since our last shot and how you are today.
Yeah, for sure. So we, just for some kind of context, we basically ordered, so working with a Swedish company who make the cabins. And we ordered the first cabin just before lockdown. So, we had no knowledge, obviously, like the rest of the world, that Corona was coming, or maybe there was some bubblings coming out of Wuhan, but we certainly didn't pick up on it. So we ordered this thing, and it was due probably in May. And then obviously Corona hit, went into complete lockdown. The Swedes, as it's been well documented, actually just got on with it. They didn't have a lockdown, which was fortunate. So the cabin then got delayed a month or so, but actually that worked out perfectly because it came in line with UK regulations. So we ended up getting our cabin in June. And then the UK government lifted regulations just at the start of July. So we got super, super lucky there. I'd love to tell you it was some insight on our part, but it was blind luck. So there were plenty of bumps along the way. So we had our first our first landowners dropped out because of coronavirus. So there was some kind of frantic calling around during lockdown to try and figure out a backup. But in the end, we actually got a much more suitable site than the original one. So that worked out well.
Amazing. So what happened there? So you'd got this. You had a landowner outside of London that you were looking to pitch the cabin on, but why did he pull out? Like, what happened? What sort of happened there? Was just...
Yes, so we had a site lined up, actually not far from where we ended up putting it, up in Hertfordshire, north of London, and the cabin was in production. We had some sort of an agreement, but nothing signed and sealed with the landowner, which was naive. Perhaps it was kind of move fast and break things. And when coronavirus came in, I think the decision that they took was that they weren't sure how the next year was going to play out, and so they didn't want to get stuck with a cabin and a failed startup on their site. So fair enough, but it wasn't for them. So then we just had to find someone who was willing to kind of take the chance. I mean, the risk is low. The worst case scenario, you're just left with a cabin on your land for a year, which isn't the end of the world. But
I've been following you quite closely on LinkedIn, which is fantastic. That we're seeing insights into this startup journey, which tend to usually stay behind closed doors. So could you perhaps explain a bit more about that? There was a piece there where you've got the cabin. It was on the back of a lorry. You were you're pulling up to actually install it. Or tell us that story, please.
Yeah, for sure. So it's such a classic case of just kind of hearing what you want to hear. So we, because obviously neither of us have a background in travel or cabins or land or any of the other relevant fields. Neither myself or Ben, and so we're kind of making this up a lot as we go along. And we the cabin ended up being about twice as heavy as we thought it was going to be. So whereas the initial plan was just to drive it in on a trailer, it ended up we had to get it in on a kind of 25-ton lorry. So it's a much more serious operation than just drive it in on the back of a Land Rover. So the question was then, we needed to find a site that could be accessed by this lorry. And the site we found required the lorry to drive across a field. And all of the initial transport companies, lorry companies that I spoke to, were just like, "There's no way you're getting a lorry across a kind of arable field." So had crops on, and I thought, nah, surely. So they were like, "You need to lay these road plates, which are these massive metal plates." I just thought that there's got to be an easier way than that. So the solution we thought was just to call around until we could find someone who would be willing to do it. And eventually we spoke to a lorry company, and they said, yeah, you'll get across there, no problem. So again, because it's so dry this time of year, because it was June, right? It was beautiful weather. And then of course, when it came to actually install it, the storms rolled in. It was the wettest week of the year, basically. And the lorry pulled up to this field. He's got to get across about 200 meters of field, and he took one look at it and was just like, no way I'm getting across there. You need to lay road plates. So back to the drawing board. And of course it's quite a big task, and this guy's got to go and do other jobs. So he literally just took the cabin off and left it by the side of the road. This was a Friday, I think. And we couldn't get anything booked until Mondays, so we just left it there over the weekend. And then we thought we were going to have to do these kind of lay a metal roadway, which would have been a serious task, but we found a kind of plastic alternative. So then recruited a team of family and friends to come up for the day, and spent about 5 or 6 hours. It was a beautiful day for it, actually. It was sun was shining, but spent 5 or 6 hours laying these plates all the way across the field, and then managed to get the cabin in. And then when the cabin gets there were additional issues. So we had to lay it onto like 6 pins. So if you can imagine, they're like big 1 meter pins. And the initial plan had been you just sit the wooden base on the pins, and it's a big target, right? But there'd been a miscommunication, my fault, I'm sure, but the cabin turned up with feet on. So it had these little metal feet. And so instead of just laying a wooden base on the pins, we then had to like balance it had to be a perfect match between the feet and the pins. So it wasn't quite a perfect match. So the cabin it looked really shaky, but it's held up so far. I think that first night was a bit uneasy. It was kind of, half of the feet were hanging off the edge of the pin, and we weren't sure if it was going to be on its side in the morning, but it's held, and I think we're out of the woods on that one.
Oh, amazing! So you got that sorted. You can imagine you guys testing it out on that first night, and it just going off to the side. Wow, classic! I love it. I love the perseverance there. It's like how many. I think the journey of a startup entrepreneur is like how many lessons can we learn in the shortest amount of time?
Yeah.
How do we stack the odds against ourselves? Let's take the road of most resistance.
It's been so interesting just to see, just kind of how wide the variety of things that go wrong are, because you expect it, but then you also look at like this operation, building a tech product, I think has its own, has kind of more complexities, but this is, you're putting a cabin by a field, people are coming to stay, what could possibly go wrong? And it's so interesting just how diverse the range of issues are, but as you say, you just tick them off one by one, and we learn a lot about cabins this summer, which was fun.
So tell us a bit more about what people are buying into then. Why would I go to your cabin over, because you're not just offering cabins, right?
Exactly.
So much more than that. Could you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, for sure. So what we're really focusing on is helping people kind of switch off from their daily life. So it's a 3-night digital detox. So when you arrive, we'll actually padlock your mobile phones in a wooden box. You've got a Nokia, you've got a map, and you've got a compass, and then we leave you to it. And the reason we do that is because, so much of the time people go on holiday and then you just spend the whole thing on Instagram replying to work emails, and you come back, just not recharged. So what we're trying to do with Unplugged is give people a space where they can really recharge. And I think with the locking away the phone, we're so reliant on our phones nowadays that, we can always make an excuse to start using it again. So even us starting this business, I'll say to myself, again, I'm going to spend a couple of hours off my phone, and then 10 minutes in, I'll make an excuse, and I'll be like, oh, actually, I just need to check this thing. And then, you end up getting sucked into an email, and that's kind of a few hours gone. So what we're trying to do is get people off their phones, give them the kind of space and the resources to do that, and then bring them into nature. So it's a beautiful site up in a little kind of wood spinney on the edge of a farm, and just allow people to kind of destimulate and actually properly recharge. Because I think in our daily lives, we're literally, you wake up, pick your phone up straight away, and that's it. The rest of the day, we're kind of dealing with messages, emails, social media, all these things. We're just bombarded, and we're not designed as humans for that life. We're designed for the simple life of the hunter-gatherer, where we've got our kind of friends and family, and we wander through the forests and listen to the birds and so on. And life in London especially is hectic. You've got sirens going by, and we're now connected to billions of people through the internet, and it's overwhelming, I think. So it's really about helping people get back into themselves, and also back to nature. I think there's so much benefit in kind of reconnecting with nature, and also just destimulating and helping change people's perspective.
Yeah, amazing. And one of the things I really want to touch on, I don't know if you have the answers to hand or whatever, but a lot of people that there's a huge unknown understanding of the CO2, like the digital resource used to power our worlds, our digital consumption right now. Actually, if you look at the digital world, it's about 2% of our energy resource, which is about the same as the aviation industry. So I think there is a beautiful part to play there, in that people in living a more sustainable life, firstly getting detracted and kind of away from this digital pollution is fantastic. Give your body and mind a place to be rejuvenated is incredible. But also the fact that you're not using emails, not watching Netflix or high level internet connection, you're helping use less CO2. You know, it's a valuable thing, very sustainable. I like it. So I know you work with some really great providers, suppliers within the cabin. It's quite minimalist, but you know, what could you tell us a bit more about this kind of what I step into when I come into this cabin a bit more, like what's at hand?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of self-contained. So it's got the amenities that you need for a 3-night stay. So you've got a kitchenette, you've got the bed on the left with a big beautiful window looking out over the field, and then a bathroom. So shower, compostable toilets, etc. So the cabin's completely off grid. So we run on solar power, and also have a compostable toilet, and everything in the cabin is designed to kind of slow you down. So we've got, you've got to grind your own coffee beans, and it's kind of slow pour coffee. So everything in there, because I think so much in our daily lives is about convenience and how do we make it quick. And it's actually, when we slow down, that we can think kind of more deeply. And I think back to your earlier point about sustainability, I think people do generally make the more sustainable choices when they kind of think more deeply about it. So I think half of the problem is just that we spend so much of our day distracted and really just not present, that that we kind of live a kind of excessive lifestyle. So I think if you really put someone in a room and get them kind of thinking deeply about it, then thinking about where the kind of food that they're eating has come from, what's the kind of impact of driving everywhere, all these things, then that's really the goal. It's really about changing people's perspective so that they can, because we don't need all of this excess. I think for centuries, the problem was scarcity for humans, but now we have a problem of abundance. So the problem now is it's too much. We overeat, we overdrink, we're overstimulated on technology, all these kind of things. And I think a big part of solving the sustainable issue, or the sustainability issue facing us as a planet, is about cultivating that awareness, about how each of us are living every day. And I think I'm a big believer in humans in general. I'm very long on humanity. I think we are inherently good, and actually, it's just life is difficult today. It's difficult being a human in the 21st century. So I think if you can really help, if we can really help people get back into themselves, then people do tend to make good choices. I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think what you've said there is, like, once you slow down and really make conscious decisions, you generally make better decisions in life, in sustainability, whatever you're doing. If you have a chance to actually think through, you tend to make better decisions on the back of it. So slowing down, reconnecting with what am I putting into my body? Less fast food, less fast fashion. Let me actually think about, do I actually need this? Will this add value to my life? Is this the person, if I buy this, am I just bowing to an immediate marketing advert that I've seen, or am I actually consciously making a decision that this is a product, or do I want to consume this? Do I need it? And I think the part that you play in that is slowing people down, reconnecting with themselves. They're going to make better decisions, and making it accessible in that time. Like, you've actually you make it easier for people when they're in the cabin to live a bit more sustainably. They're connecting with nature. They're making their food. They know where it's coming from. It's probably the produce is traveled within a few miles. And so the footprint there, you're connecting people, making better decisions. That's what it is. But when we switch back on again in our normal day-to-day lives, we're reactive. We kind of live this whole kind of robotic lifestyle where we're in a trend. We go up, we make this sort of coffee. We don't know where it comes from. We don't have time. Like, everyone doesn't have time. Everyone's far too busy. It's not about that we don't care, like you said. Like, I have faith in humanity, right? We are generally inherently good people. we're called humankind, not human evil, right? So I think if you give people the tools to live a bit more sustainably, they tend to. It's just at the moment we're like, oh, I don't have time to care about my impact. I don't have time to go and source a sustainable coffee or a grass-fed beef. Or make a delicious and actually go and forage for my vegan plant-based meal. It's no time. So therefore, it's like it seems that we don't care when actually we do. We just don't have time for it. So I think if people reconnect, actually, COVID has been a beautiful time for people to reconnect with what was valuable. When the world switched off, the economy was failing. People were like, "What do we do? What do we do?" And it pushed us back to the very core elements of how we live our lives, and that was with people that we loved, and having to shop and source things very locally because everything else was switched off. So hopefully, it's like I think now is time, and I think having your podcast out at some good times now is like we get to choose, we get to rebuild back better, we get to bring in things into our lives that are actually going to make a conscious make a conscious decision on what you bring back into your life. You have a chance now, and I think that's valuable. But as inherently, what will happen is the big brands will start marketing to us again. We'll get gaslit and say, "This, you want to feel normal again, like eat this, drink that, do that," and then give it 6 months. People will be like back in this whole switched on, fast-paced world. Stress is going through the roof. The diseases and ailments that we get just through stress alone is killing us. And that's when you're going to be very busy, my friend. So, and people that want to detox, I love it. I think what you're doing is great. I want to get a quick fire round out of you, if I may, really quickly. What is your favorite business book?
I'll go for a slightly unconventional one, which is Walter Isaacson's biography of Benjamin Franklin. So he's the guy who wrote the Steve Jobs one, which is also great. But I think Benjamin Franklin is such an interesting guy, and what really stood out to me is how kind of playful he was. So he was just the kind of almost the leading polymath in history. Kind of started the American Declaration of Independence, all these things, but he just treated life as a game almost. And, he really approached it with a kind of joy and a spring in his step, and I think we can learn a lot from that. And I cite that as a business book because I think people take themselves too seriously, people take business too seriously, and just having a little bit more kind of joy and laughter in life, I think adds a lot.
Amazing. Love that. Next one. What's a sustainable hack that our listeners can adopt in their lives really quickly?
I think take a break on on the theme of all the things, or get less busy. Let's go for that. Get less busy. So I think we feel this need to be more busy, more meetings, all these things. If you just get less busy, we'll become more aware, and then it's when we're busy that we end up eating badly and overdoing it and making the wrong choices. And you just don't need to be busy. I think we feel like the solution to being busy is to get busier and to work harder and to see more people, do more things, and actually there's a lot to be said for just clearing the calendar, tear up the to-do list, and just get less busy.
Amazing. Love that. Get less busy. Last but not least, what's a piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
There's a really good quote I heard recently, which is, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 11. And I think that is definitely something I could have done with when I was younger, because I remember thinking just seeing someone else who'd been doing what I was trying to learn, whether it was business or whatever job I was doing at the time. You see just how far ahead people are, and you just feel useless, and you think I'm rubbish at this, I'm never going to figure this out. And what you realize is that everyone's clueless in the start, and people just, and most people are still clueless at the end as well. But you know, that just is, life is just imperfect. And I think there was, I definitely had a tendency to kind of, you know, assume, we just do, we assume that other people have it easy, and, you know, that we can never do that. And I think what I'm starting to figure out is that, you know, no one knows what they're doing, you know, so that's very empowering, I think.
I love it. Look, Hector, you've been a great guest on the Kind Community podcast. Thanks again for coming on, sharing the update on Unplugged, the digital detox retreat. Get it done. You're actually launching the second cabin relatively soon as well. So look forward to seeing more on that when that happens. Is it, before we go, anything else you want to maybe pass on to the listeners, questions, anything like that before we wrap up today?
No, I mean, it's been so much fun chatting again, Jan. Look forward to the next conversation. And also, you know, just really, I've really enjoyed watching what you're doing with the Kind community. So I'm very excited to see that continue to grow. But yeah, I think I'll reiterate it again, you know, to everyone listening, is you just don't need to be that busy. So get less busy, everyone. I think anyone listening has that opportunity, and that's it. I think we feel like it's not an option, but it's always an option. So get less busy would be my closing notes, and thank you so much for the time.
My pleasure, Hector. Thank you so much again. See you soon. See you on the other side. Bye for now.
Bye.
If you were inspired by my conversation with Hector, please remember to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with anyone you think would love to join our community. I'm Giannavelli, and this is the Kind Community Podcast.